Namaskar. I'm thankful to India International Center for inviting me to speak on Gandhiji's views on arts, aesthetics, and culture. Gandhiji has always been my very favorite subject to speak on because I've learned a lot from my parents and grandparents and who were very close to Gandhiji. So let me start on the topic. A person who wrapped his body with unstitched cloth, got his head shaved, moved among unprivileged and exploited people, fought for freedom and justice all his life. Can he be remotely connected with arts and aesthetics? This description befits only one person in this world, and that is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, popularly known as Gandhiji or Bapu. He did have very clear views on art and literature. They were as simple and straightforward as he himself was. He believed that all true art is always simple and natural. It should be understood by all. There should not be any need for the artist or the writer to explain it to the viewer or the reader. Gandhiji's views on beauty are connected with human beings and the nature. And that is not limited to what one sees with one's naked eyes. Real beauty, according to him, is purity of heart. For example, he wrote in the journal Harijan, dated 7th April 1946, and I quote, "Why can't you see the beauty of color in vegetables? And then there is beauty in speckless sky. But no, you want the colors of the rainbow, which is a mere optical illusion." We have been taught to believe that what is beautiful need not be useful, and what is useful need not be beautiful. However, since it is not a solid substance, only an optical illusion, it fades away after some time. Gandhiji draws our attention to elusive beauty of rainbow and not to get trapped by such illusions in our daily life. I quote him again, "Truth, Satyam, is the first thing to be sought for, and beauty, Sundaram, and goodness, Shivam, will then be added unto you." Jesus was, to my mind, a supreme artist because he saw and expressed truth. And so was Muhammad, the Quran, being the most perfect composition in all Arabic literature. At any rate, that is what scholars say. It is because both of them strove first for truth that the grace of expression naturally came in, and yet neither Jesus nor Muhammad wrote on art. That is the truth and beauty I crave for, live for, and would die for. This is what Gandhiji wrote in Young India of 20th November 1924. Leo Tolstoy, Russian writer and thinker, was one of those whom Gandhiji deeply respected. They had never met. Their age difference was almost 40 years, but they did write to each other. Tolstoy's book, What is Art? And Essays on Art was published in Russian in 1898. His essays on art were published between 1861 to 1905. The book was translated into English by Aylmer Mott and was published in 1930. In his introduction, Mott says, and I quote, "Tolstoy was intensely interested at different times in many different subjects, but was always interested in art. It took him 15 years to elucidate the ideas expressed in his book, What is Art? Unquote. Tolstoy was no more by the time Gandhiji could lay his hand on this book. However, we do find some similarity in their views on art and beauty. Great thinkers often think alike. In the second chapter of What is Art, Tolstoy says, "What is this strange conception of beauty, which seems so simple to those who talk without thinking, but in defining which all philosophers of various tendencies and different nationalities can in a century and a half come to no agreement? What is this conception of beauty on which the dominant doctrine of art rests?" In the fifth chapter of the same book, Tolstoy defines art. He says, "If only the spectators or auditors are infected by the feeling which the author has felt, it is art." Unquote. So Tolstoy is talking about the seamless connection between the artist and the viewer or listener. While describing Brahman in the Upanishad, we come across the concept of neti neti, not this, not this. Because it is difficult to fathom the concept of Brahman, Tolstoy also used similar process of negation while talking about beauty. He says, I quote Tolstoy, "Art is not, as the metaphysicians say, the manifestation of some mysterious idea of beauty or God. It is not the aesthetic physiologists say, a game in which man lets off his excess of stored up energy. It is not the expression of man's emotions by external signs. It is not the production of pleasing objects. And above all, it is not pleasure, but it's a means of union among men, joining them together in the same feelings, and indispensable for the life and progress towards well-beings of individuals and of humanity." This is so similar to what Gandhiji wrote in Young India on November 13th, 1924. And I again quote Gandhiji, "There are two aspects of things, the outward and the inward. The outward has no meaning except insofar as it helps the inward. All true art is thus expression of the soul. The outward forms have value only insofar as they are the expression of the inner spirit of man." Unquote. So Gandhiji's views on art and aesthetics I have quoted so far are documented in his journals published in 1920s. And they are very much relevant in the 21st century as well. Yet many thought that he was a political leader. How can he have an eye for art? Well, that can be seen from the way he reacted and appreciated decoration at some political conferences. One such conference was organized in a village called Kaliparaj in Gujarat on the 18th January 1925. He was quite impressed by the way the place was tastefully adorned, he said. It seems that nature itself has decorated the place. To learn from the nature and not to hurt it in any manner is the real art. There were no artificial embellishments, not even a carpet or floor covering. The main dais had the canopy of bamboos and green leaves. The path to the dais had bamboos tied with creepers. And steps to the dais were created by the sacks filled with sand. There was no man-made picture or objects, not even hand-spun fiber. Gandhiji was so pleased to see this that he said that where there is sky as the canopy and sand as the seat, only trees and leaves can adorn the place. Gandhiji's love for nature and his eye to see beauty in it is evident from this. An exhibition of nearly 50 spinning wheels was also organized at Kaliparaj. Right from 6 to 7 years old children to aged men and women, all were spinning on those charkhas. Normally, one finds strings of colorful paper flags as decoration during festive occasions. They were absent in Kaliparaj. Gandhiji commented that such paper flags neither display sense of decoration nor refined taste. They are like buying the problem of insomnia by selling one's sleep. Such paper decorations annoyed Gandhiji because for him it was killing of the art. In one of his letters written to Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, he said, and I quote, "Sometimes art lies in not interfering with nature's unevenness and irregular curves and lines. Fancy hammering the earth into a perfect sphere? Perhaps then we should cease to be." Gandhiji did believe that art has an important place in life. He met an artist from Bengal who fully understood Gandhiji's views on Swadeshi. He advocated the use of goods produced in one's own country. He was Nandalal Bose. In Shantiniketan, he was known as Nanda Babu or Master Moshai. He used to wear khadi, used to spin on charkha, and being inspired by Gandhiji, he used to paint on handmade paper with earth colors. But 6 years prior to their meeting, Gandhiji had met Nanda Babu's disciple, Vinayak S. Masoji. In 1930, on the 12th of March, Gandhiji had left Sabarmati Ashram for Dandi, where the salt satyagraha was to take place on the 6th of April. Masoji went to the Sabarmati Ashram. There he happened to meet Reginald Reynolds, who had arrived on the same afternoon. This gentleman was a British writer, a Quaker, and anti-colonial activist. He was a great supporter of Gandhiji. He was leaving for Dandi to meet Gandhiji. He asked Masoji to accompany him, and both of them left together and met Gandhiji at his camp. Gandhiji asked Masoji whether he was planning to stay back and participate in the satyagraha. Masoji declined. The same night they left. Gandhiji was arrested at around 12:45, which was past midnight. So it was the morning of the 5th of May 1930. This was Gandhiji's fourth arrest in India. Masoji's meeting with Gandhiji was brief, but it was etched in his mind. He did come to know about Gandhiji's arrest. Later, when Masoji was in the quiet environment of Mount Abu, he made a painting in which Gandhiji is sleeping on a cot in the veranda of a hut. 3 satyagrahis are sleeping nearby, and there arrived British police flashing torch to arrest Gandhiji. This painting was completely based on Masoji's imagination. He had seen the hut and also Gandhiji, but not the arrest. The painting was displayed in the exhibition organized by the Congress. Gandhiji visited the exhibition with Madhav Bhai Desai, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, and many others. Looking at Masoji's painting, Rajkumari asked whether it was artist's imagination Or did it really happen? And Gandhiji smiled and said, yes, yes, exactly, exactly. They came like that. This sentence became the title of the painting. Gandhiji expressed his happiness to the artist. An interesting anecdote has been narrated by Professor K.G. Subramaniam, who was Nanda Babu's student and was later teaching art at the MS University in Vadodara. I'm quoting it here from the book published on the occasion of Nandalal Bose's centenary exhibition, which was organized at the National Gallery of Modern Art in New Delhi in 1983. So I'm quoting Professor K.G. Subramaniam. In 1936, Nandalal's name came up for wide national publicity. That year, Mahatma Gandhi invited him to set up an art exhibition in Lucknow to go with the session of the Indian National Congress to be held in that city. He accepted the invitation with some diffidence. He was a confirmed admirer of the Mahatma, but not yet met him personally and was unaware of his tastes and predilections. Besides, art never seemed to be anywhere near the center of the Mahatma's interests. For all the initial misgivings of Nandalal, the exhibition was a great success. Nandalal had set it up with impeccable taste using the simplest possible means. The Mahatma was taken aback. According to Nandalal, for a man who had reputation of being insensitive to art, he showed enlightened interest in the exhibition, visiting it more than once and making such observations as showed a very responsive mind. With this, Nandalal became, for the Mahatma, the national artist, one who could create an art that could reach down to the lowest of the low, eschewing all luxurious and elitist trappings. Unquote. Now let us look at Nanda Babu's version when he was asked by Gandhiji to arrange an art exhibition at the Lucknow Congress session and take full responsibility. I quote here Nanda Babu's words. I had heard that Gandhiji was not very particular in the matters of art, but my impression turned out to be totally wrong. He looked at and examined each painting with an artistic vision. I became completely aware of his sense of art and aesthetics from one small incident that took place over there. Exhibition hall was decorated with very simple materials. Seeing our work, he expressed happiness. We had taken care of minute details while decorating the hall, but someone had left a bucket under a table by mistake. It had escaped our notice, but the moment Gandhiji entered, he immediately said, "Don't you think that bucket is ruining the beauty of this place?" So another Congress session was going to take place at Faizpur, and Professor K.G. Subramaniam in the same article says as follows, and I quote him. So the Mahatma approached Nandalal again next year with a request to plan the whole township for the Faizpur Congress. This was more than Nandalal bargained for. He wrote back to him to say that he did not feel equal to the responsibility. Could he consult an architect? The Mahatma would not take a no from him. With his characteristic sense of humor, he wrote to him that he was not looking for trained pianists. He wanted a fiddler. Nandalal was forced to accede. He planned the whole township in bamboo and hay, used them in a variety of ways, with a few flashes of color at the gates. The result is reported to have been extraordinary. Nandalal had really fiddled into people's hearts, roused the admiration of cognoscenti. For Faizpur exhibition, Gandhiji requested Nandababu to meet him at Wardha 2 months prior to the conference. He apprised him of his vision. Gandhiji did not want Nandababu to bring precious paintings from Kalabhavan or Shantiniketan because untimely rain could spoil them. Gandhiji knew that Nandababu would do justice to his vision. In one of his letters to Kashinath, Trivedi Gandhiji had once written that Nandababu was a creative artist, whereas he himself was not. God had gifted him artistic sensitivity, but had not bestowed upon him creative faculty that could give it a form. Nandababu was gifted with both. Nandababu had reached Faizpur weeks before the inauguration of the exhibition. He visited farmers' homes in nearby villages, selected various objects that they used in their day-to-day life, but had never observed anything artistic in them. The selection of objects was made by Nandababu's keen eyes. When he displayed them in the exhibition, they all looked so different, as if they had adorned a new form, not only the place of the Congress conference, the whole Tilak Nagar, right from his entry gate, had become an exhibition. The gate was a beautiful example of rural art. Nandababu had engaged local labor and artisans and had used all the material that was available locally. The exhibition was formally inaugurated. Gandhiji wanted common people and also freedom fighters to see the exhibition and experience confluence of patriotism, local resources, and aesthetics. The artisans from Andhra had made small purses, cases to keep spectacles, etc., from the grass that grew at the riverbank. Some artisans had made paper from bamboo, skin of bananas, and also from munja grass. The purpose of this exhibition was not to give the message of art for art's sake, but it was aimed at well-being of all, which included those involved in cottage industry and also those who purchased those items for their use. Well-being of the masses has been the prime objective of all the activities Gandhiji himself conducted and encouraged others to do the same. In his inaugural speech, Gandhiji said, "This exhibition is not a fun show, nor has it been put up with an intention to dazzle or delude people. This is purely an educational effort. The only purpose is to let the rural folks know that if they properly use their hands and feet and the material and the resources available around them, they can double their income." Gandhiji convinced all those present there that if lakhs of unemployed Indians get engaged in cottage industry and khadi, they can earn their living honestly. Dust can turn into gold if people use their hands for positive and constructive work. Gandhiji was trying to connect people with art, was drawing their attention to local resources, and was also showing them the way to earn honestly and live with dignity. In Young India, 13th November 1924, Gandhiji wrote, and I quote him, that my room may have blank walls, and I may even dispense with the roof, so that I may gaze out upon the starry heavens overhead that stretch in an unending expanse of beauty. What conscious art of man can give me the panoramic scenes that open out before me when I look up to the sky above with all its shining stars? When I read that, I was reminded of famous Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh's one of the most stunning paintings, Starry Nights. It is an oil painting he painted in 1889 and is displayed at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It is nature, but also it has awesome imagination of the artist. Going back to Gandhiji, another Congress conference was organized at Haripura in Gujarat on February 1938. Responsibility for decoration was again given to Nanda Babu. Once again, an exhibition of khadi and cottage industry was organized. This time, Nanda Babu gave an additional attraction. There were 88 panels of paintings in Patua style of Bengal, depicting ordinary events of daily life, like Shehnai Wala, Dugdugi Wala, mother bathing her child, goddesses, etc. All these were painted with natural colors. Gandhiji has also addressed the subject of obscenity. It does influence one's sense of aesthetics. He gave equal importance to physical and mental health, as that creates a healthy society. This can be seen in the following episode. Once there was a discussion about holding a Congress session at Jagannath Puri in Odisha. Some leaders drew Gandhiji's attention to the erotic sculptures of Puri and Konark temples and advised that they should be covered with plaster because they were obscene. Gandhiji perhaps found that suggestion valid in the interest of general public. One wealthy industrialist offered to pay for plaster coverings, but Gandhiji decided to take Nanda Babu's opinion before taking action on this suggestion. Nanda Babu did not agree with it. He said that the most exquisite artworks will be destroyed. They were precious heritage of Indian culture. Gandhiji was convinced and he disagreed with the suggestion of covering those sculptures with plaster. However, Congress session did not take place in Odisha. But one may wonder, why was Gandhiji inclined initially to cover those erotic sculptures and then decline so quickly? For Gandhiji, top priority has always been the welfare of the masses. When Nanda Babu drew his attention to art and aesthetics of precious Indian heritage, he changed his opinion. This is the magnanimity of this great man. He had no rigid views or ego hassle. Even about his writings, he had said in Harijan, dated 30th September 1939, and I quote him, "My aim is not to be consistent with my previous statements on a given question, but to be consistent with truth as it may present itself to me at a given moment. The result has been that I have grown from truth to truth." Unquote. Gandhiji was exposed to European art as well. Let us read his views in his own words, and I quote again, "I do not think that European art is superior to Indian art. Both these arts have developed on different lines. Indian art is entirely based on the imagination. European art is an imitation of nature. It is therefore easier to understand, but turns our attention to the earth. While the Indian art, when understood, tends to direct our thoughts to heaven. It may be that my unconscious partiality for India, or perhaps my ignorance, makes me say so. I unquote. So Gandhiji's cottage in the Sevagram ashram did not have any artwork. Nanda Babu's disciple, Amrutlal Begad, has narrated an interesting episode in his book, Smritiyonu Shantiniketan, Shantiniketan of Recollection. Nanda Babu one day carved a spinning wheel on the clay wall of Gandhiji's cottage. Gandhiji noticed it and was happy. A few days later, Nanda Babu hung a painting in Bapu's cottage. In this painting, he depicted Gautam Buddha holding close to his chest a handicapped baby lamb whose mother was being taken as an offering to King Bimbisar's sacrificial pit of the altar. Nanda Babu's original painting of this theme was made in 1928. It is in the collection of National Gallery of Modern Art. Something similar he made for Bapu Kutir. Gandhiji kept that painting with great care. What had attracted Bapu? Was it his affection for Nanda Babu? Or was it the beauty of the painting? Or what is it Buddha's compassion, who had held the little mute lamb in his embrace? Perhaps all the three are valid. As Gandhiji himself has said, his life is the message. Music is also an art, very close to Gandhiji's heart. According to Gandhiji, music means rhythm, order. Its effect is electrical. It immediately soothes. In the book Satyagraha in South Africa, written by Gandhiji, and the first edition published in 1928, Gandhiji mentions about almost fatal assault on him in Transvaal in the year 1908. Mir Alam, who had assaulted him, was his old client and used to seek Gandhiji's advice in all his affairs. But he did not approve of Gandhiji cooperating with the registrar of Asiatics, who was going to issue a certificate after obtaining the impression of 10 fingers. Gandhiji wanted to be the first one to obtain that certificate. But even before he could enter the office, he was hit on the head and he fell down and became unconscious. He was taken by the Baptist minister, Mr. Joseph Doak, to his house. A doctor stitched his wounds on the cheek and upper lip. He was in great pain. The moment he gained consciousness, his very first request was to release Mir Alam and his associates. He said, "Those who have committed the act did not know what they were doing," unquote. His pain in the ribs and teeth was almost unbearable. He requested the pastor's little daughter Olive to sing for him his favorite English hymn, "Lead Kindly Light." Olive sang it in her melodious voice. Gandhiji has recorded that song relieved him from the pain. He is also mentioned in Young India, dated 10th January 1929, and I quote, "Music has given me peace. I can remember occasions when music instantly tranquilized my mind when I was greatly agitated over something. Music has helped me to overcome anger," unquote. Gandhiji tells us purity of life is the highest and the truest art. The art of producing good music from a cultivated voice can be achieved by many, but the art of producing that music from the harmony of a pure life is achieved very rarely. Unquote. I think it is the same with all of us. Whatever I say would touch your heart, provided I have spoken from my heart. I'm sure all would agree with me. Pannalal Ghosh was a famous Indian flautist from Bengal. My mother, Labuben Mehta, had interviewed him. During their conversation, he said that when Gandhiji was not well during his stay in Mumbai at Juhu, he had gone to play flute for him, along with his younger brother, tabla player Nikhil Ghosh. Panna Babu was given only 10 minutes to be with Gandhiji. So he stopped after 10 minutes. Gandhiji requested him to play more. Then he played for 45 minutes. Gandhiji was so happy that he wrote on a piece of paper, Bansari bahut madhur bajai, Mo ka Gandhi. You played the flute very sweetly. There are many such experiences of musicians and singers. Development of mind is one of the essential characteristics of culture as per the dictionary meaning. Gandhiji has also spoken about spirituality as an essential hallmark of culture, which is basically one's inclination, attitude towards various things, people, and incidents in life. What is spirituality according to Gandhiji? He said, and I quote, spirituality is not a matter of knowing scriptures and engaging in philosophical discussions. It's a matter of heart, culture of unmeasurable strength. Fearlessness is the first requisite of spirituality. Cowards can never be moral. The Epic Mahabharata has played a significant role in Indian culture. Gandhiji's favorite scripture, Bhagavad Gita, is part of this epic. It is mentioned in the epic itself that what exists here exists elsewhere. What is not here is nowhere. It is indeed an all-encompassing text. Let us see how Gandhiji interprets this great epic. And I quote, I regard Duryodhan and his party as the baser impulses in man, and Arjuna and his party as the higher impulses in the field of battle in our own body. The eternal battle is going on between the two camps, and the poet seer has vividly described it. Krishna is the dweller within, ever whispering in a pure heart. Like the watch, the heart needs the winding of purity, or the dweller ceases to speak. Unquote. Brevity and lucidity are the hallmark of Gandhiji's language and thought. Quintessence of this huge epic spread over 18 parvas, comprising 100,000 shlokas, is given by Gandhiji in these 5 sentences. Gandhiji further says that it is the duty of every cultured man or woman to read sympathetically the scriptures of the world. Respect for diversity of religious scriptures of the world is the characteristic of a cultured person. One of my favorite quotes from Gandhiji's writing is from the Harijan of 9th May 1936, and I quote, "The Indian culture of our times is in the making. Many of us are striving to produce a blend of all the cultures which seem today to be in clash with one another. No culture can live if it attempts to be exclusive. There is no such thing as pure Aryan culture in existence today in India. Whether the Aryans were indigenous to India or were unwelcome intruders does not interest me much. What does interest me is the fact that my remote ancestors blended with one another with the utmost freedom, and we of the present generation are a result of that blend. Whether we are doing any good to the country of our birth and the tiny globe that sustains us, or whether we are a burden, the future alone will show. Unquote. Gandhiji has repeated this thought in many different ways and on many occasions. Looking at the present scenario of the world, we can clearly see that the present generation, instead of being inclusive and expansive, takes pride in becoming exclusive, narrow, and shallow. This is quite contrary to Gandhiji's views on culture. It is imperative on the part of those of us who agree with Gandhiji to demonstrate his views in our daily life. That is the only way to prove the validity of his work and philosophy of life. We have no other option if we want to survive peacefully and harmoniously. Culture blossoms in peace, and peace spreads culture. Aesthetic sensibility and positive emotions spread like ripples when the arts are ingrained in life. Thank you very much.